Hey everyone, Comrade Garlic here. Just before starting this reading, just letting you guys know there's a lot of, obviously, we know there's a lot of things going on with the coronavirus. So, I just want everyone that, wants to make sure to get involved, helping out in your mutual aid programs in your area. I'm sure there's a lot of work to be done. No panic. If you don't have anything going on mutual aid wise, just make sure you're safe, clean, you've got food, don't impulse buy, and take care of yourself, y'all. So this time we're going to be reading, I'm going to be reading on the Vanguard Party once again. And then this is going to continue on with the Anthony Rayson, Rashid kind of interview style. So this is Anthony Rayson. You've expressed admiration for Hamas, the revolutionary Palestinian group. They've managed to build popular support and establish social/survival programs, even under horrific conditions of occupation, extreme violence, poverty, etc. Yet they are not an explicitly Marxist-Leninist group, but rather a national liberation organization with a strong religious component. These popular organizations have come in many flavors, including communists and anarchists. Why do you believe so strongly in the traditional Leninist model, the Vanguard Party / democratic centralism, etc.? In this uniquely racialist, consumerist, extreme capitalist country with so much moribund, marginalized, and subservient to Moscow Marxist tradition. All right, this is Rashid. Why in today's struggles do I promote the need for Marxist-Leninist Maoist-style party leadership? This is a question asked often of and by many avowed communists, which many can't answer. Many also reject the Vanguard Party concept as you do because of it's been frequently misapplied and misunderstood. But to me, the answer seems pretty simple. Common sense, really. Once you get past rhetoric and stereotypes and face the concrete realities and needs of revolutionary struggle, I'll begin with this question, then move on to your other points. Why the Vanguard Party? Once you understand that class lies at the center of any genuine struggle against capitalism, namely the struggle between the working class, proletariat, and the capitalist class, the bourgeoisie, then it becomes clear that there is a need to awaken the consciousness of workers as a common class to the fact and cause of their exploitation and oppression, and the criminal rule of the bourgeoisie. Also, the working class needs to be united and organized to challenge their oppression. Furthermore, they need to understand that overcoming their exploitation compels coordinated struggle on many fronts, beyond merely seeking better wages / work conditions, job security / benefits, etc., which is the typical extent of what workers struggle for when left to their own spontaneous activism. They must realize that it is a broad political struggle, and the bourgeoisie oppresses many sectors other than just the working class. To accomplish this and uniting them with other oppressed sectors against the bourgeoisie requires a proletarian-based leadership structure. But the critical problem which opponents of the Vanguard Party have never answered in over 100 years of debate is the theoretical and practical question of how to unify the broad and fragmented working class into a united movement wherein it is conscious of itself and its interests as a class. Only genuine ML and MLM parties have solved this problem and have been able to awaken and maintain working class consciousness and unity, and on a level of struggle higher than mere trade union politics, which Lenin called economism. Many on the left, including anarchists and avowed communists, because they can't resolve this problem, avoid, downplay, distort, or have altogether abandoned the question of class struggle and its central role in any genuine anti-capitalist revolutionary movement. Or they otherwise endlessly speculate how working class success might be achieved. Karl Marx expressed early on that capitalism could be destroyed and a free and equal society ultimately achieved only by the proletariat first overthrowing the bourgeois class and then exercising its own economic, political, military, and cultural dictatorship over the bourgeoisie. Failure to suppress the bourgeoisie after its power was overthrown would only result in its regaining state power. This he witnessed firsthand. Because proletarian struggle was only in its infant stages during this day, Marx was unable to answer how it could effectively defeat and exercise its dictatorship over the bourgeoisie. But his studies of those early workers' struggles, specifically the Paris Commune of 1871, gave him some ideas on the methods that the workers were in the process of discovering. He did recognize, although he supported the Commune as a heroic effort, that it could not successfully hold on to its power because the French proletariat was not yet sufficiently class conscious, united, and organized. Subsequently, Lenin, who analyzed and actively participated in the day-to-day fight against the even more advanced, consolidated, and powerful capitalist system, monopoly capitalism or imperialism, of his era, furthered Marx's analysis and was able to devise and apply a definite organizational form and tactics which would to unite and organize the proletarian struggle. He realized that a disciplined party committed explicitly to the interests and philosophy of the working class was needed to awaken the proletariat on a nationwide scale to their common class identity and interests. To unite and organize them upon this common class stand against and to overthrow the bourgeoisie and to hold on to that power and repress the bourgeoisie. And his method, the ML Party, above all others, worked. In fact, it achieved the first working class socialist state in Russia in 1917, which doesn't discount the fact that in the process, many mistakes were made alongside the achievements. And errors were to be expected since it was the first successful struggle of its type and met with determined resistance from the capitalist class in Russia and other imperialist powers, all of whom promptly invaded Russia, attempting to overthrow the new socialist state. Unlike much of today's academic and petty bourgeois left, Lenin and company did not refuse to take the lead for fear or failure or a fight, nor get bogged down in moral dithering. Instead, they stoutly took to the lead, defied and endured the severest state repression, applied theory to practice, refined their tactics, and gave the world and those to follow an invaluable standard of leadership and struggle to learn from and build upon. In China, Mao Zedong, studying and observing Marx's, Lenin's, and Russia's examples, further advanced the ML Party concept and adapted to it his own people's struggles against multiple advanced imperialist powers and the internal class enemies of the Chinese. From this experience, Mao discovered that even after a proletarian revolution succeeds in defeating the bourgeoisie and achieving a socialist society, the class struggle continues, often in forms more complicated than the initial struggle to overthrow capitalist state power. This because, although overthrown, the bourgeoisie and its influences still exist within the new society, and they will struggle unceasingly to regain power. To combat this tendency, he found that a series of revolutions in culture had to be waged to wipe out bourgeois influences and values, and that class struggle had to continue, especially within the Vanguard Party itself and upper levels of the socialist state, to keep the party loyal to the proletariat and to ensure it wasn't subverted by aspiring and regenerated bourgeois elements into their own vanguard. This required giving the masses greater oversight and control over the party and state and active power to combat bureaucratic degeneration. He thus enhanced party democracy. But in any event, the party structure is indispensable. The key issue is what classes, interests it serves, and it's loyal to. It's ironic that many people ask why the working class, which is indefinitely larger and thus more difficult to organize than the bourgeoisie, or oppressed nationalities of people, needs the leading party to unite and organize it and struggle against the imperialist class and system. Yet no one ever questions nor even recognizes that the capitalist class also has and needs its own political organizations to successfully exercise and organize its own unity and dictatorship over the working class and everyone else. Lest we forget, bourgeois political structures and leaders preceded and led every movement where capitalism and imperialism overthrew feudal, slave owning, etc. Political economies, especially here in America, what indeed were the Whigs, Democrats, Republicans, Tories, etc., but parties of the existing or aspiring ruling classes. And it is these parties that rule in capitalist societies in the interest of the bourgeoisie. In case you didn't notice, it's the wealthy minority who the entire political system and its parties serve in capitalist society, and it's against the working class, poor, and other marginalized groups that their laws, courts, police, military, prisons, etc. exert control. This is why you have no genuine ML parties, I should say MLM parties, operating legally in any capitalist country. The bourgeoisie everywhere is very class conscious. It remains vigilant in keeping the workers atomized, divided against each other along racial, gender, national, religious, and other lines, and focus on imminent individual survival needs. To counter this, to awaken, unite, organize, and coordinate the proletarian as a common class against bourgeois rule requires a leading organization that is totally committed in theory and practice to and is rooted in the working class. This is what the MLM, Revolutionary Vanguard Party, is all about and why it's needed. So, question: what is a vanguard? Since we use the term to refer to the MLM party and because in many circles the term has taken on a distorted meaning equivalent to a four-letter word, I want to comment on what a vanguard actually is. As any dictionary would tell you, vanguard simply means leadership, whether of a class, society, army, movement, or opinion. Essentially, it is an advanced sector or group that unites, informs, organizes, and guides a larger sector or group. Just like the central nervous system unites, informs, organizes, and guides the activities of the body's organs and major muscle groups, while it also remains an organic part of and draws information from the very body it serves. Only when the vanguard or leadership is unhealthy or represents the interests of a body other than the one it directs does it become an oppressive thing. Keep this in mind. Societies, movements, armies, etc., are complex social structures that require centralized leadership to unite, coordinate, draw practical lessons from, organize, and guide them. In fact, there has never existed a society without a centralized leadership, whether you're looking at communal pre-state band or village or slave-owning or state-level feudal or capitalist societies. They have all had a centralized leading body. From clan mothers to head matrons to big men, headmen, chiefs, elders, counselors, from monarchs to political parties with legislative, executive, and judicial branches, or a combination of these. Even esteemed anarchists like Noam Chomsky agree that it's impossible to organize a society without leaders. Again, the key question turns on whose interests the leaders serve. Are they leaders who exist as an organic part of society and movement they lead, or are they representatives of a small specialized group that aims to impose its own will and values upon everyone else, whether by force, fraud, or otherwise? And in all cases of leadership, a combination of democracy and centralism is used. The question is whether it's democracy exercised by and among the masses and their genuine leadership, or by and among a select minority acting against the masses. Which brings me to the concept of democratic centralism, which you imply is something unique to MLM parties. On criticism and democratic centralism, let's look at communal pre-colonial African villages, for example, which many anti-authoritarians and anti-vanguardists hail as genuine models of social equality and democracy. It may be relevant to point out that some of our readers that many Africans kidnapped and brought to the Americas in chains came from such societies. Consequently, many of the escaped slave societies here in the Western Hemisphere, known as the Maroons, modeled their more egalitarian societies after those pre-colonial communal villages. In those African societies, there existed a very centralized authority which resided in an elders' council that spoke through a head elder. This council was composed of respected elders which presided over various traditional social and civil functions in the village. The head elder was appointed and could be removed or replaced by vote. Many people confuse the terms chief and head elder or think that they denote the same type of leadership, which I should distinguish. Unlike the head elder, the chief rules over a patriarchal clan society. He inherits his position by heredity instead of by vote, and he can only be disposed of by defeat in war. Many Maroon societies were also ruled by such chiefs. The chief also had command over a specialized body of warriors. Unlike the chief, the head elder had no power to force her or his will on the village because she or he or they had no special army or police. Instead, a decision announced by them had greater force, moral authority, because it was actually the decision reached by a collective agreement of the village's most respected members, the Elders' Council, which participation and input from the society as a whole. Once the decision was reached by the council in a dispute or in selecting a head elder or other matters, it was binding on everyone, including those who disagreed with it. Those who bucked the social will were also taken before the village council and masses if the offense were serious enough. If found guilty in the mass hearing, they were punished accordingly, which would include banishment from the village. This is, in essence, democratic centralism. In fact, it is duplicated almost exactly in the model of organization and decision-making used by the MLM party, which I'll demonstrate momentarily. But first, I'd like to give actual examples of such centralized authority, a vanguard, in the communal African village and how they applied an internal popular democracy, or what many Marxist-Leninist Maoists call self-criticism. Ojinga Odinga described the head elder's role in his pre-colonial Luo village in Kenya. This is a quote. A head elder did not issue orders. He sounded out the elders, met them in consultation, and then when he said, "This is my decision," he was announcing not his personal verdict, but an agreed upon point of view. His function was not to lay down the law, but to consult and to arbitrate, to learn the consensus of opinion, and to keep unity of his people. Elders were men of substance and integrity, and recognized and outstanding individuals. Even when they came from leading lineages, they did not inherit leadership, but had to earn it, end quote. Frantz Fanon has described the internal public democracy practiced by African societies as tradition, a process used by MLM parties, which communists call criticism and self-criticism. He furthermore observed that this practice counteracts the anti-communal mental habits of the Western intellectual types. Quote, self-criticism has been much talked about of late, but few people realize that it's an African institution. Whether in the jimas of North Africa or in the meetings of Western Africa, tradition demands that the quarrels which occur in the village should be settled in public. It is of a communal self-criticism, of course, and with a note of humor, because everybody is relaxed and because in the last resort, we all want the same things. But the more the intellectual imbibes the atmosphere of the people, the more completely he abandons the habits of calculation, of unwanted silence, of mental reservations, and shakes off the spirit of concealment. It is true that already at that level, we can say that the community triumphs and that it spreads its own light and its own reason, end quote. So we see a centralized leadership structure, a vanguard in African communal society, and the combination of public democracy and centralized enforcement of the collective will in their decision-making and dispute resolution processes. But these are concepts rejected by the anti-authoritarians because they don't really understand them, just as they don't understand or otherwise tend to stereotype or idealize many things due to failing to objectively search out and draw truth from facts instead of opinions, or responding to the oppressive system with emotions rather than reason. Now, allow me to show you the parallels between the democratic centralism of communal societies as described above and that of the genuine MLM parties by quoting none other than Mao himself, critically explaining democratic centralism to his own party comrades who failed to grasp and apply what he called unity of the leadership of the masses, or simply the mass line method. This is a quote by Mao. It seems that some of our comrades still do not understand the democratic centralism which Marx and Lenin talked of. They are afraid of the masses talking about them, afraid of the masses criticizing them. What sense does it make for Marxist-Leninists to be afraid of the masses? When they have made mistakes, they don't talk about themselves, and they are afraid of the masses talking about them. The more frightened they are, the more haunted they become. I think one should not be afraid. What is there to be afraid of? Our attitude is to hold fast to the truth and to be ready at any time to correct our mistakes. The question of right or wrong, correct or incorrect in our work has to do with contradictions among the people. To resolve contradictions among the people, we can't use curses or fists, still less guns or knives. We can only use the method of discussion, reasoning, criticism, and self-criticism. In short, we can only use democratic methods, the method of letting the masses speak out. Both inside and outside the party, there must be full democratic life, which means consciously, I'm fucking this word up. C word, putting democratic centralism into effect. It's back again. We must bring questions out into the open and let the masses speak out. Even at the risk of being cursed, we should still let them speak out. The result of their curses at the worst will be that we are thrown out and cannot go on doing this kind of work, demoted or transferred. What is so impossible about that? Why should a person go up and never go down? Why should one only work in one place and never be transferred to another? I think that demotion and transfer, whether it is justified or not, does good to people. They thereby straighten their revolutionary will and are able to investigate and study a variety of new conditions and increase their useful knowledge. I myself have had experience in this respect and gained a great deal of benefit, end quote. Butchered that? I'm sorry. Having thus explained that party democracy is a process of decision-making that compels openness and draws upon and implements the collective will of party cadre and the masses, Mao went on to explain party centralism as all party cadre being bound to the decisions reached collectively through the democratic process, just like in the communal village. Furthermore, the MLM party's central committee is organized horizontally, much like the Elders Council. Like the council, the CC consists of elected group members who preside over specifically defined social and civil functions, ministries. As you're aware, I preside over the defense ministry of our NABPP PC. The democratically elected chairperson or secretary corresponds to the head elder. The party's general membership is drawn from the proletarian class of the people it leads and represents, or its members must have developed a proletarian class stand and integrated themselves with the people. Leadership positions are democratically bestowed based upon proven ability and commitment and are subject to revocation by vote. Party leaders and their practices are to be openly scrutinized by party members and the masses it proposes to lead. There is thus unity of the leadership and the masses. In purpose and practice, just as the bourgeoisie and their parties are linked together. Indeed, the party is directly connected to the masses by party organs and mass organizations, just like the UPM is connected to the body's organs, just like the central nervous system is connected to the body's organs and muscles by the peripheral nervous system. It's a class struggle. As I've noticed, the vanguard becomes problematic when it represents and pursues the interests of those other than it leads. What recommends the MLM party is its ideological orientation to countering such subversion. It first of all emphasizes its proletarian orientation and recognizes that so long as there is class society and class struggle, which continues even under socialism, there's always and in all places going to be struggle for domination between the classes. In capitalist societies where the bourgeoisie rules, its values and its own vanguard dominate the society, economy, culture, and institutions. And it will maneuver and strive ceaselessly to prevent the development and rise of a genuine vanguard of the proletariat, subjecting the masses to the rule and influences of its own vanguard. In socialist societies where the proletariat is in power, the overthrown bourgeoisie will struggle at every turn to subvert the proletarian party and state and to regain power. This is what class struggle means. It is because many don't understand class struggle that they've witnessed reversals of socialist gains, the overthrow of socialist parties and states and their own reversion to capitalist systems, and splits and struggles within revolutionary parties, yet fail to recognize these were the product of ongoing struggle between the bourgeoisie and the proletariat. This is what we communists call the two-line struggle. Therefore, any aspiring revolutionary vanguard must be conscious to resist being infected, influenced, and infiltrated by the class values of the enemy. That means the party must be uncompromisingly committed to the working class. It is impossible to prevent elements that share, harbor, or develop enemy class values from creeping into or cropping up within a revolutionary party. This is why Lenin promoted splits as the health of the party, and Mao promoted cultural revolutions, arousing the masses to rise up against bourgeois influence and elements within the revolutionary party and state. Attempts to maintain unprincipled unity between genuine revolutionaries and bourgeois elements within such parties have led time and time again to their being subverted by counter-revolutionaries, such as occurred in Africa. In the African National Congress, when Winnie Mandela was purged and Chris Hani assassinated in the early 1990s, and power was given to capitalist turncoat Nelson Mandela, and the PAIGC, where Amilcar Cabral was assassinated in 1972 and his brother Louis was purged, and so on. Answer the Comrade Maroon. There was an article written a few days ago by Comrade Russell Maroon Schultz called The Dragon and the Hydra, which was a response to my own earlier article on the role and need of the vanguard parties. In that article, Comrade Maroon leveled charges against ML parties, claiming they have a legacy of internal factionalism, sterile practice, and betraying the very people they were supposed to lead and struggle against oppression. 16 charges are relevant to this discussion, and I haven't had the opportunity to finish my formal reply. I want to briefly respond here. I've just answered the point on factionalism, to which I might add that Maroon's article completely overlooks the role of class in the revolutionary struggle, and even proposed that anarchists, anti-authoritarians, and proponents of ultra-democratic movements share organizational concepts with the Maroon societies that had elders and chiefs and were in no form ultra-democratic or decentralized. But to further illustrate my point, imagine that several committed conscious prisoners came together to form a leadership group to educate and unite others to struggle against the administration and guards' abuses. So to develop a solid line of theory and tactics to achieve this end, and it meets with initial success in winning over and organizing other prisoners. This group answers to and is committed to its prisoner base and grows as they educate more prisoners into their class line. As soon as the pigs see their authority and monopoly on influence and power challenged, they're going to try and repress their leadership group in various ways, including by trying to turn its supporters and members using both the carrot and the stick. Inevitably, you're going to have some driven by their own power agendas, pig inducements, or other motives to become agents, infiltrators, and turncoats. These subversaries will maneuver to increase and consolidate their influence in numbers, and try to subvert and sabotage the gains and goals of the genuinely committed cadre. So what do? Do you go along with them? Do you maintain an unprincipled unity with them inside your organization or movement where they are privy to your plans, identities, etc., enabling them to subvert the entire group and movements? Of course not. What you do is expose them and distinguish yourself and your position from them before the people. And if they are enemy agents, you correct them. If they are not, but persist in their reactionary aims, you purge them from your ranks. If their numbers are not so great, or if their numbers are substantial, you and the serious cadre split off from them into a separate organization. This is all done within the structure of democratic centralism, of course, and distinguishing your commitment to the masses from their opportunism, self-interest, or reactionary politics. This isn't mere factionalism, it is part of the class struggle, part of the struggle to keep the people's vanguard loyal to the class it represents and not subverted by the enemy of that class. That's how the enemy controls us right now, using Judases who look like, talk, and / or act like us, but who really aspire towards and serve them, or who have ulterior interests at heart. To counter this, only the MLM party specifically and explicitly adheres to the ideological and political lines of the proletariat and no other. As Lenin observed, Marx warned that when communists unite with others in struggle, they enter into agreements to satisfy the practical aims of the movement, but do not allow any bargaining over principles. Do not make but do not allow any bargaining over principles. Do not make theoretical concessions. In other words, while we may compromise and adapt our tactics to align ourselves with allies, we must never compromise our class stand. Our commitment is to the ideological and political line of the revolutionary proletariat and no other. This is why Mao emphasized that political and ideological line determines everything, particularly the success or failure of revolutionary struggle. The moment we allow influences of the bourgeoisie, petty bourgeoisie, lumpen, and other less than revolutionary sectors to seep in and sway us, we betray the working class. Not adhering to the proletarian class line, as Marx cautioned, is how many revolutionaries have been turned from the course of revolutionary class struggle to one of reaction. As for sterile practice, this critique doesn't apply to genuine MLM elements because it's what the elders counsels. A vanguard isn't a vanguard simply because it calls itself one, or because it forces its leadership on the people. It becomes a vanguard because a substantial part of the people voluntarily accepts and follows its leadership, which it earns through correct analysis, practice, and example. If it ain't doing nothing and the people don't recognize it, it ain't their vanguard. Like with the NABPPC, we aren't a new African vanguard yet, only the nucleus of one, but we will definitely aspire to this. As you see, this is complicated, but turning to the next issue, I should make a few final points regarding Comrade Maroon's article. The Maroon societies, which he promotes as a model revolutionary organizations, never attempted to, nor were capable of overthrowing the slave system, a system much weaker and less organized than today's imperialist one. Furthermore, they coexisted with the slave system, fed off of it, and many became its agents and slave catchers and were even manipulated into fighting each other by the planters. The Maroons were not revolutionaries, but rebels who merely fled and defied the slave societies, but left them intact to oppress others. So, in relation to the masses of slaves left behind, one can say the Maroons had a legacy of betrayal of the oppressed masses, sterile practice, and of being factionalized amongst themselves, exactly like the Hydra that Comrade Maroon uses to symbolize the rebel Maroon societies. They amounted to a common class of oppressed people, but composed of many contending heads, unorganized, uncoordinated, often bickering, fighting, and contending with each other, and thus unable to lead the collective body into struggle to defeat the common enemy. A task which the one-headed dragon, the MLM party, once awakened, has proven eminently capable of leading its collective body in achieving. Consider also how easily the European imperialist powers overran Africa's separate village societies and instituting colonialism across the entire continent during the late 1800s and early 1900s, exactly because those societies lacked a unifying leadership. Yet, Comrade Maroon promotes such localized forms of social organization as models of resistance against today's even more advanced imperialism. Thus, contrast this with the fact that the only time a society of many separate communal villages held its own and ultimately defeated imperialist forces was when they were united, organized, coordinated by the ML or MLM party. The Chinese defeated multiple imperialist powers under the leadership of the Chinese Communist Party. The Vietnamese defeated the French in 1954, and then the US in the Vietnam War under the leadership of the Vietnamese Communist Party, etc. It also speaks volumes that only slave uprisings that actually overthrew a slave system. It also speaks volumes that the only slave uprising that actually overthrew a slave system was organized under a conscious class leadership, albeit that of an aspiring bourgeois one, the Haitian Revolution of 1791 to 1803. This last point answers the comrade's point about betrayals of the masses. Again, any group that does this is not a mass-based vanguard, or it has been subverted, which is what happens when you don't struggle against, purge, and or ultimately split from subversive influences and elements to maintain the health and class integrity of the party. And that's where I'm going to stop for now. Hope you guys are enjoying this so far. Drop me a comment, like and subscribe, tell your friends if you want. Obviously, check out the United Panther Movement, the New African Black Panther Party, on our social medias, Twitter, Instagram, all that. Alrighty, I'll catch y'all later. All power to the people.